Hello everyone, my name is Arthur.
And I'm Skippy.
And today I'm going to talk about a deceiving, deceitful misconception in Dungeons & Dragons and many other TTRPGs. As usual, I'm going to provide some context before moving on to the main topic. I'll start by saying that we're living in the golden era of TTRPGs. Thanks to Kickstarter and BackerKit, many people are being able to fund their projects and basically make their dreams come true. This has allowed the market to grow, and we have more games than ever to choose from, and this is a good thing. However, I think that you will agree that regardless of how many videos you click and watch that say Hasbro has just killed D&D or Hasbro just released or did something that broke the camel's back and now Dungeons & Dragons is dead forever, Dungeons & Dragons is still D&D, and it's going nowhere. And within the TTRPG industry, Dungeons & Dragons is still, to this day, the highest earning franchise and the most popular. And you know what? That's fine. That's a good thing too.
Dungeons & Dragons will be dead eventually. Caves and Kobolds will become the staple.
Sure, Skippy. Dungeons & Dragons has Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro behind it, backing it as a project and as a brand. So we can all say that the brand Dungeons & Dragons has a lot of power and media push, thanks to Hasbro.
We also have a big company behind our project.
Oh yeah? And what company is that?
Its name is, it's Hasbro.
And this is why when you see a TTRPG being played in shows like Stranger Things, Futurama, Big Bang Theory, Geeks and Freaks, and even Dexter's Laboratory many years ago, it is Dungeons & Dragons. They are playing D&D. And again, that's a good thing because it does create a certain level of consistency and identity to the hobby. And in the past 10 to 15 years, Dungeons & Dragons has become more popular, and this is thanks to different factors. Let's see what they are. First, we have series and cartoons that show Dungeons & Dragons in some of their episodes, like Stranger Things or the examples I just mentioned before. Then we can talk about the recent 2023 movie Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Despite its commercial disappointment, which is $208.2 million in revenue, contrasted to the budget of $150 million for its production, I think the movie was great and did great. Movies like these are expected or supposed to triple their budget cost to break even. I believe that this movie did resonate with a lot of people and it helped Dungeons & Dragons reach new fans. You may disagree, and that's fine. That's debatable, but let's consider the performance of past Dungeons & Dragons movies. The Dungeons & Dragons movie in 2000 had a budget of $45 million and had a box office worldwide revenue of $33.8 million. So that's very bad. Then we had Dungeons & Dragons Wrath of the Dragon God. In 2005, 5 years later, it had a budget of only $15 million and the box office worldwide revenue was of $2.6 million. So that was a complete failure. And then the Dungeons & Dragons movie in 2012, The Book of Vile Darkness, it had a budget of $12 million. So basically people were losing faith in these projects. And that movie in particular was not even shown in theaters. It went directly to a DVD release. So you can imagine how that went. And I think it's important to mention that the calculation to break even mathematically is worse for movies with low budget. Those projects have to make from 6 to 10 times what they cost to break even. But I digress. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is astronomically better, and it is objectively the best Dungeons & Dragons movie ever made. The next reason of why Dungeons & Dragons has become more popular in the past 10 years is the pandemic. Yes, we were all locked up, it was horrible, but a lot of people found relief in the TTRPG hobby. Hasbro's sales for Dungeons & Dragons jumped 33% in 2020, and the game suffered a digital transformation. Platforms like Roll20, Foundry VTT, D&D Beyond have made the game very accessible. Additionally, multiple studies highlighted Dungeons & Dragons' therapeutic value. It helps to lower stress, anxiety, and depression levels by providing a safe outlet for socializing and creativity.
We Kobolds named the pandemic the Golden Era. Everyone stayed hidden within their lair and were scared to gather in large groups. The perfect definition for a kobold.
I guess we did become kobolds for a while, huh? Next reason is D&D Beyond. It is evolving more than ever, and Hasbro is going all in into the digitalization of the hobby. And perhaps D&D Beyond is not the cup of tea for the veteran, old-school player that says that advanced D&D will always be superior than 5e or its future iterations. But it is a great tool, and the argument here is not whether 5e is a better system or not. The argument is D&D Beyond good for the hobby and to reach more fans so people know Dungeons & Dragons more? Yes, it is. It has a free tier to harness interest, and then it has 2 subscription levels, $2.99 and $5.99. This is considerably less than a subscription for Netflix or Disney+. So to conclude, I am actually happy that the brand Dungeons & Dragons is adapting to this new digital world. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it is thanks to this digital era that systems like Shadow Dark RPG exist now. And that is actually the system that I'm playing at home. So I think it's good for the hobby, whether you like D&D Beyond or not. And a small shameless plug, you can watch our Chaotic Stupid Show episodes to know what's going on in our Shadow Dark RPG campaign. And last but not least, Critical Role. Yep, these guys are doing real heavy lifting to bring the hobby to new levels and to reach new fans. And it is thanks to them that a lot of people are getting to know what Dungeons & Dragons is and loving it. So much so that their campaigns have become animated shows. The Legend of Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine are available in Amazon Prime. If you haven't watched them and you are a TTRPG fan, you are missing out. They are very, very good. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if in the future Campaign 4 becomes an animated show as well. It's pretty good too. Then, a couple of years ago, through Darrington Press, which they own, they released Daggerhard. It is a new system with very fresh rules. Yet, this was all possible because they started playing what?
Dungeons & Dragons.
The icing on the cake is that in the past few years, thanks to their success, we are starting to see more and more people recording themselves, creating a brand, and live streaming their games and publishing videos of their campaigns.
Yes! This means more and more people will learn what a kobold is.
That's right, Skippy. Kobolds will get the recognition they deserve. Everything I've said so far are facts. I did sprinkle my opinion here and there, but numbers don't lie. Dungeons & Dragons is objectively more popular than ever, and that's a good thing. Okay, now let's talk about the misconception that this level of popularity is creating in new fans of Dungeons & Dragons. With Critical Role's marvelous rise to fame, more shows started to appear. We have Not Another Dungeons & Dragons Podcast, or NatPod. We have Legends of Avantris, Dungeons of Drakenheims, which is done by the Dungeon Dudes, The Adventure Zone, World Beyond Number, and Dimension 20 with Brandon Lee Mulligan. All of these have different styles. They have different vibes, a different atmosphere, but they all have something in common. They all started playing
Dungeons & Dragons.
This is the common denominator. However, there are 2 more characteristics that are present in all of these shows. The first is the quality and top tier level of their role-playing. And the second is the presence of miniatures, maps, 3D terrain, ambience, lights, room decoration, beautiful sets of dice, and sometimes a massive TV that is part of the table.
Arthur, let people play however they want. Jeez.
Of course, they can do whatever they want. My objective is to clarify something, and this may not be the case for everyone, but many of the people that are getting to know the hobby thanks to these shows, they may get the wrong idea that you require those 2 things in order to play. We cannot remove from this equation, and we have to understand that many of the people we see in these shows are actors or voice actors. Dungeons & Dragons has become their job. And I think it is very important to understand and clarify that you don't need to be a voice actor to play Dungeons & Dragons. You don't need to get in character. Hell, you don't need to know how to roleplay. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should not roleplay. I'm saying you don't have to. Please allow me to elaborate. When I was 16 years old, I was living in Montreal, Canada. At school, I became friends with other Latinos. We were all taking classes to learn French, and it was a beautiful experience, but I think it was only natural that we talked to each other. So one day, I invited them over to my place to play Dungeons & Dragons. My brother was the GM, and it was a lot of fun. We played together for months and it was a great experience. One of the players of this game, his name was Ivan, and he was the shy guy from the group. He didn't roleplay. He hardly ever, perhaps never, spoke in character during a session. Whenever he wanted to do something, he would say, "My character does this." And whenever he wanted to interact with an NPC, he would say, "My character says this." He would always describe and express verbally what he wanted to do or say. He did not roleplay. In contrast, he was always there. He was always present and he was always available to have a good time with his friends. And I don't know about you, but I would rather play with a person that's actually committed and interested to play than a guy that has a critical role level of role-playing but can't make it to have the sessions. For me, being there and showing up is magnitudes better than the ability to roleplay well. Plus, like I mentioned in my video about beliefs and instincts, role-playing is a skill. Not everyone is born being good at it, and that's fine.
This is true. I just know how to be me. When I play Dungeons and Dragons, all my characters are kobolds, because that's the only thing I'm comfortable with.
Exactly, Skippy, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is the first misconception. Being good at role-playing is absolutely not a requirement to play D&D. The second misconception is that for a Dungeons and Dragons game to work, you need miniatures, maps, 3D terrain, lights, room decoration, beautiful sets of dice, and sometimes a TV that is bolted to the table. Yeah, some of the setups that you see in TikToks and Instagram are jaw-dropping. This is something that we actually talked about in Chaotic Stupid Show episode 4. No shame in spending your money in anything that you want to improve your games and sessions. No shame in spending big bucks in pretty sets of dice or to increase your D&D collection of original miniatures. But again, just like roleplay, you don't absolutely have to spend hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars in these things. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should not spend your money however you want. I'm saying you don't have to do that in order to play. One more time, please allow me to elaborate. My brother and I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for more than 20 years. Both my brother and I, we have spent good money on the hobby. We have different sets of dice, we have original D&D miniatures. We purchased Dungeons and Dragons official books for 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, 5th edition, and now Dungeons & Dragons 2024. My brother has an ever-increasing collection of TTRPG books. You can actually see those in some of his videos. And one day, we even crafted our own terrain tiles to build dungeons. We spent a whole day cutting and painting cardboard. It was fun. However, in our current Shadow Dark RPG campaign, we are not using maps. We are not using any kind of terrain. And we are not using any miniatures. Everything has been done with theater of the mind. And I must say that the absence of props or miniatures has not resulted in a less enjoyable experience. On the contrary, I think this is one of the best campaigns we've ever had. Our roleplay is not top tier, like I said before. In fact, only 2 of the 4 players at the table actually roleplay. I'm one of them. But we're not the best. And coming back to the terrains and miniatures topic, perhaps it is the system we were playing that allows for such flexibility. But my point here is that if you want to start playing D&D, you literally don't have to spend a dime. Okay, this is the list of the things that you actually need to play D&D. Number 1 is you need people, preferably friends and family members. One of these has to be the GM. You cannot play Dungeons & Dragons without a game master. This person acts as the narrator of the game and they are the referee for everything that happens in the game. Number 2, you need the rules. However, you don't have to buy the book. You can use the SRD, the System Reference Document. This is a free resource found in D&D Beyond's official page, link in the description. You can download it in Italian, Spanish, English, and Dutch. Number 3, you need pencils and paper. You don't need the official character sheets. And again, before you jump in the comments, I'm not saying you should not use the official character sheets. I'm saying you don't need them. Truth is, they are not strictly necessary to play the game. And that's it. Now you can play the game. And in this thing you will agree with me. The hardest thing to find is the people. People that will actually commit and be there and not cancel at the last minute.
But Arthur, What about the miniatures?
If you absolutely need or want to have the characters represented at the table, you can use toys. You can use cardboard cut in circles with the names written. You can use screw caps, nuts and washers, bolts, basically anything with the name written, as long as everyone knows who is who.
And what about the maps?
You can grab a poster board or a large piece of paper, and with a ruler, you can draw a square grid to place the miniatures or toys or screw caps. However, I must say that this is completely optional. You can always use theater of the mind. This means just use your imagination, even for combat. Doing this basically eliminates the need for maps, terrain, or miniatures.
And what about the dice?
You don't need dice. You can use a digital app to roll with your cell phone or your tablet. Those apps are free. However, I will admit that not having dice when playing Dungeons and Dragons is kind of a bummer. I will admit that those may be the only expense necessary to play. However, you can get a set of dice for as low as $5 to $10. There are, of course, fancier sets of dice that go from $20 to $50. And some unique luxury sets are going to be more expensive than that. However, if you have no dice and you absolutely want to play today, you can use an app. Or if you forget your dice at home, you can use the app. One last time, everything that I've said in this video has the sole objective to erase or remove that misconception that epic roleplay or that 3D terrains, miniatures, and a super amazing 55-inch TV bolted at the table are strictly necessary to play D&D. They're not. This is a game that mostly relies on imagination. So if you want to start playing today, just do it. Don't wait any longer. If you are about to start playing Dungeons and Dragons, you will find and understand that finding the right people is the hardest thing. People that actually want to show up, commit, and perhaps take a rain check in other activities and plans in order to make it to a session. My name is Arthur.
And I'm Skippy.
And I'll see you in the next one.